In this video, we're going to talk about the rest of the organelles that you find inside a eukaryotic cell. In our previous video, we covered the structure of the cell membrane, the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, and the mitochondria. And if you haven't watched that video, I suggest you go and watch it first. In this video, however, we are going to start looking at the rest of the structures that you find in both plant and animal cells. So we're going to have a look at the Golgi apparatus, the ribosomes, the lysosomes and vesicles, the cell wall, the vacuole, and the chloroplast. So let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail. We've already looked at things like the mitochondria and the nucleus, and we're going to be moving on and having a look at some more stuff that you would find in your plant cell over here. Okay, let's start with our Golgi apparatus or Golgi complex. So you can see this green arrow is pointing at it over here. It's like this red section just below the endoplasmic reticulum. So it has flattened sacs that are similar to the endoplasmic reticulum. It modifies proteins and lipids from the endoplasmic reticulum and packages them into Golgi vesicles, and it helps to produce enzymes and other modified proteins such as hormones. Next up, we're going to have a look at some ribosomes. So, as you can see here from this green arrow, they are mostly attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, okay, which is what we looked at in the previous video. There are, however, some that are just free floating in the cytoplasm. Now, in your eukaryotic cells, they are split into these two subunits, okay, so a slightly larger one and a smaller one. And in eukaryotic cells, they are called ATS ribosomes. They are slightly different in prokaryotic cells, and we'll have a look at those when we get there. They are made in the nucleolus of your nucleus, as again we looked at in the previous video, and their function is protein synthesis. So this here is representing our mRNA, which is involved in that process. They are also made of a substance called ribosomal RNA, which can be shortened to rRNA. Okay, so there's many different types of RNA that you need to know about. These ones are made of ribosomal RNA, okay, and that is our ribosome. Next up, let's have a look at vesicles. Okay, so these are membrane-bound sacs. They're single membranes, okay, in comparison to some of the other organelles that you will find. And they are used for transport and storage of molecules around the cell. Now, there's a specific type of vesicle called a lysosome. Okay, and these contain hydrolytic enzymes called lysozymes. Now, they are usually formed from the Golgi. And the cell doesn't want these lysozyme enzymes to be just freely released into the cell, or they would start digesting the internal parts of the cell, like the organelles. So they are kept in these specific vesicles called lysosomes and are only released when they are needed. Okay, so we've looked at vesicles and we've looked at lysosomes. Now that we've looked at the organelles that are common across both plant and animal cells, it's time to have a look at those that are specific just to plant cells. So here's a plant cell, and we are going to first start by looking at the chloroplasts. So here is a lovely big chloroplast. They are the site of photosynthesis, probably one of the most important processes in the world. So these chloroplasts have a double membrane, both an inner and an outer membrane, with some intermembrane space. They have these sacs, so these round circles called thylakoids. Inside a thylakoid is the lumen, so like the space within. This is where the chlorophyll is contained that absorbs the light for photosynthesis, along with other photosynthetic pigments like carotenoids. These thylakoids are stacked into grana, okay, often hundreds high, to help increase the surface area. They also have these links, so like bridges between your two thylakoids and between your stacks. These are called intergranal lamellae, and these are also there to help increase the surface area. The next part kind of makes up the bulk is the stroma. So this is a bit like the cytoplasm of your chloroplast. It contains enzymes, ribosomes, and some genetic material to enable your chloroplast to be a little bit more self-sufficient. And finally, we have some starch grains. So the blue circles there, that's what represents the starch grains. And those are basically just storage molecules of glucose when that chloroplast is doing its photosynthesis. Okay, so there we have a chloroplast. Another organelle that you can find in a plant cell is a vacuole, and it's represented here by this blue section at the bottom of your plant cell. A vacuole is basically just a fluid-filled sac, and it's found in the cytoplasm of plant cells. It contains a solution of water, salts, sugars, and sometimes pigments, and it's got a membrane around the outside that's called a tonoplast. Now, a vacuole's job is important in terms of pressure in the plant cell. Okay, so water from osmosis will move into your vacuole, and in doing so it creates this pressure called turgor pressure. That's kind of like the outward pressure that helps a plant cell maintain its shape. Okay, it's also important in helping plants to maintain their upright position, especially in plant cells and plants that don't have lignin within their xylem vessels. So a vacuole is there as a support feature within a plant cell, and it's also there to contain some sugar, some salts, some pigments and some water. The other thing in a plant cell that provides strength and rigidity is, of course, the cell wall. Now, this surrounds the outside of your plant cell, and along with providing strength and rigidity, it also prevents your cell from bursting. Okay, its other function is that it allows water to pass along it in something called the apoplast pathway. Okay, and you'll learn more about this when we look at transpiration of water, okay, and the root structure system. Now, it consists of microfibrils of cellulose and other polysaccharides like hemicellulose embedded in this matrix in the middle. Okay, and at the top we've got a middle lamella. Now, this is the bit that sticks your plant cells together, okay, so that plant cells can be continuous. And at the bottom we have our plasma membrane, which divides the inside of the cell with the outside of the cell. So your plant cell is important in rigidity and strength. Okay, it allows water to pass along it in the apoplast pathway. There's a matrix of polysaccharides in the middle, and your middle lamella is at the top, and that's the bit that joins your plant cells together. In this video, we have covered the structure of eukaryotic cells. We've looked at Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, lysosomes and vesicles, the cell wall, chloroplasts and vacuoles. In the next video, we are going to look at prokaryotic cell structure and the structure of viruses.